They sent the infertile bride to a lone cowboy as a joke. She returned with a child. Clara had always felt like she was living in the shadow of everyone else's expectations. In her small town, life moved slowly, and everyone knew everyone's business. Every glance and every whisper carried a weight. From the time she was a child, Clara had been gentle and kind-hearted, always helping neighbors and animals alike. But no matter how much good she did, she could not escape the cruel jokes and murmured judgments of those around her. For years, she had hoped that someday she would find happiness and love. But the whispers about her body, her inability to bear children, had followed her into adulthood. Doctors had told her that conceiving might never happen, and although she tried to remain strong, the pain of feeling incomplete in the eyes of her community weighed heavily on her heart. Her family had been kind, yet they too could not shield her from the cruel reality of living in a town that valued women only for certain abilities. Then came the day that would change everything, though at first Clara had no idea it would. Her family, who often seemed protective and loving, approached her with a mixture of hesitation and forced smiles. The words they spoke felt like cold winds on a winter morning. "Clara," her mother began carefully, "there's an arrangement, a marriage for you. It's a chance for you to start fresh." Clara's eyes widened, hope flickering briefly in her chest.
"A marriage?"
To whom? Her father avoided her gaze. "He lives outside town. A cowboy."
"A man who keeps to himself. You will go and live with him."
Clara's heart sank. She had imagined a life filled with love and care, maybe even a gentle man who would accept her wholly. But the way her parents spoke, it felt as though they were trying to rid themselves of a burden. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why send me to someone I don't know?"
Her mother sighed, almost in pity. "It's
best this way. You will see. He is a kind man." But Clara could hear the unspoken words. Breath. Everyone knew the truth. She had been branded infertile. And in the town where children were seen as the greatest blessing, being infertile was seen as a curse. Her parents were not cruel, but they had been persuaded by neighbors and family friends who thought it amusing to send the infertile bride away. By the next morning, the town had already turned Clara's new marriage into gossip. Whispers followed her through the streets. They sent her to the lone cowboy, as if she were a joke, some women said with cruel smiles. Men snickered, shaking their heads as if they were watching a foolish play unfold. Clara felt her cheeks burn with shame. She packed her few belongings in silence, her hands trembling. She carried no hope, only a strange mixture of fear and anger. She hated that her body had been made into a joke, hated that her family had silently agreed to it, and hated that the entire town seemed eager to witness her humiliation. The journey to the cowboy's ranch was long and isolating. Clara traveled in a dusty carriage, the wheels rattling over uneven roads. She looked out of the window and saw endless fields stretching to the horizon, the sun casting long shadows over the land. The wind whispered through the trees as if mocking her, carrying with it the laughter and murmurs of her neighbors. Her mind wandered to the stories she had heard of the lone cowboy. Jack, they called him. A man who had lived alone for years, quiet and reserved, a stranger to the town. Some said he was cold, others that he was strong and noble. But Clara didn't know what to believe. But the thought of facing him, alone, terrified her. The carriage slowed as she approached a narrow path leading into a cluster of trees. Breaths. Soon the sight of a small wooden ranch came into view. Smoke curled lazily from a chimney, and a few horses grazed in the nearby field. Everything seemed peaceful, almost unreal. Clara wondered how life could feel so calm outside the town that had tormented her. The coach stopped in front of the ranch. Clara stepped down, her legs shaky. She carried her small trunk, the wood rough beneath her hands. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The door to the house opened slowly, and there he stood. Jack. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-kissed skin from years of working outdoors. His eyes were deep and steady, a dark brown that seemed to look straight into her soul. He did not smile immediately, but there was a softness in his gaze, a quiet curiosity.
Clara? He asked, his voice low and even.
Yes, she replied, almost in a whisper. He stepped aside, gesturing to the small room she would stay in.
It was simple, with a single bed, a wooden table, and a small window letting in the afternoon light. Clara noticed that the room was clean and well kept, and despite her fear, she felt a tiny spark of relief. "You can put your things here," Jack said, nodding toward the bed. Clara set down her trunk and looked around. The room smelled faintly of wood and leather, comforting in a way she hadn't expected. Jack's presence was calm, not overwhelming. Breaking. He did not judge, nor did he laugh at her situation. Clara had expected cruelty, a reminder of the town's gossip, but he offered only quiet courtesy.
I'm sorry if this is strange for you, he said after a pause. I've lived alone for a long time. I'm not used to company. Clara nodded, her throat tight.
I understand. There was a long silence. The wind blew outside, rustling the leaves, and Clara felt a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. She didn't know if she would ever feel comfortable here, yet the air around Jack seemed safe. Days passed, and Clara slowly began to adjust to life on the ranch. Jack was patient, showing her how to handle chores, how to care for the animals, and how to move with confidence in a place where survival depended on strength and care. Each day she learned something new, not only about ranch life but about herself. She discovered that she was capable of hard work, that her body was not weak, and that her heart could feel hope again. But the town's whispers haunted her. Even from miles away she imagined the snickers and mocking voices, the women who had called her worthless, the men who had whispered cruel jokes. "Some nights," she cried quietly, feeling the weight of years of shame pressing down on her. Yet, with every passing day, Jack's silent support gave her courage. He never pried, never mocked, never let her feel small. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara sat on the porch watching the golden light fall over the fields.
Jack joined her, leaning against the railing. They didn't speak much, only watched the sky together.
Clara felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years, a sense that maybe, just maybe, she could belong somewhere. Jack finally spoke, his voice gentle. "You've handled yourself well these past days."
Clara looked at him, surprised.
"I didn't think I could." "You did," he said simply. Brick. "And you will continue to." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever said that to her, in all the years of ridicule and judgment. She looked at Jack and saw not a stranger, but someone who had quietly become her anchor, someone who didn't see her as broken, but as strong. The wind carried the distant sounds of the town, faint and almost unreal. But Clara realized that she was leaving behind more than just a place. She was leaving behind the shame and judgment that had followed her for so long. Here, at this lonely ranch, with the quiet strength of a man who had seen pain himself, she began to feel a tiny glimmer of hope.
By the end of that week, Clara could laugh softly when she tripped over a horse or when a cow nudged her unexpectedly.
Jack would chuckle with her, not at her, and for the first time, she felt accepted. She still remembered the town's cruelty, but it began to feel like a distant memory, a shadow fading in the light of a new life she had yet to fully imagine. And though she did not know what the future would bring, Clara understood one thing clearly. She was no longer just the infertile bride sent away as a joke. She was Clara, a woman capable of strength, endurance, and perhaps even love. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the stirring of a hope she hadn't dared to feel for years, a hope that life could surprise her in the most unexpected ways. Days turned into weeks, and Clara began to settle into the rhythm of ranch life. The mornings were quiet, broken only by the low mooing of cows and the soft neighs of horses. The smell of hay and leather filled the air, and the early sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. Clara woke before dawn each day, her hands calloused from chores, her muscles tired but strong in a way she had never felt before. Jack, always silent but watchful, taught her everything with patience. At first she had stumbled over tasks that seemed simple to him, feeding the animals, mending fences, or carrying heavy buckets of water, but he never laughed or scolded her. Instead, he demonstrated each task slowly, explaining why it mattered, and then allowed her to try herself. There was a quiet dignity in the way he worked, and slowly, Clara began to understand the rhythm of his life. Despite the long hours, there were small moments that made the work easier. Jack had a way of noticing when Clara struggled, offering a hand at just the right time. Brown. Once, when she had dropped a heavy bale of hay, he simply helped lift it with her, saying, "We do it together. That's how it gets done." Ray. His voice was calm, steady, without judgment, and Clara felt a warmth she had never known. As the days went on, they shared more than work, inspiration. During the quiet evenings, they would sit outside on the porch, watching the sunset over the fields.
Jack would tell stories of his life, how he had grown up on this ranch, how he had loved and lost, and how he had chosen solitude after a painful heartbreak.
Clara listened intently, realizing that beneath his rugged exterior, Jack carried his own scars. She began to open up too. She spoke of her childhood, of the dreams she had once held, and of the years of humiliation in the town. Jack listened without interruption, without pity, and that simple act of listening made her feel valued. Slowly, Clara felt her heart begin to heal, the tight knot of shame in her chest loosening just a little. Their bond grew quietly, but steadily. There was no rush, no pressure, only a gentle understanding between them. Clara learned to ride horses, to mend broken tools, and even to cook simple meals over the fire. Jack would watch her with a quiet pride, and occasionally a small smile would cross his face, subtle but warm. One afternoon, as they worked together in the fields, a sudden rainstorm caught them by surprise. They dashed for the barn, laughing despite being drenched. The sound of the rain on the roof was soothing, and for the first time Clara felt truly carefree. She realized that she had never laughed like this before, not in years. Jack's presence had become a source of comfort, a safe space where she could be herself without fear. Even as their connection deepened, Clara could not ignore the whispers of the town that lingered in her mind. She worried that if she ever returned, people would mock her still, but Jack's steady support reminded her that she did not need the approval of others to feel worthy. He treated her as an equal, a partner in every sense, and that knowledge gave her strength. One evening after a long day of chores, Jack suggested they take a walk along the river that ran near the edge of the ranch. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water, and the world seemed to pause in that quiet beauty. Breath. Clara felt a sense of peace she had never known, as if the river carried away the years of pain and judgment. As they walked, Jack spoke softly. "You're stronger than you think, Clara. You've handled more than most people ever could, and you're still here." Clara's chest tightened with emotion. I've never heard anyone say that to me before, she admitted. Most people just
Ask, judge, or laugh, or ignore you.
I know. That's why I wanted you here, not because I needed company, but because I wanted someone honest, someone who could see the world clearly. You've got a strength inside you that even you don't fully realize yet. Her eyes welled with tears, but this time they were not tears of shame. They were tears of relief, of hope.
For the first time in her life, someone saw her not as broken, not as a joke, but as a whole person. As the days passed, Clara began to notice small changes in herself. She walked with more confidence, spoke more freely, and even smiled without hesitation. Jack noticed too, often commenting quietly on her progress. Breaths.
You've got a good eye for details, he said one afternoon, as she helped mend a fence. And your hands?
They're strong.
Clara laughed softly, feeling warmth spread through her chest.
Bet. Compliments had once felt awkward and hollow, but with Jack, they felt genuine, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Despite the growing closeness, there was a quiet tension in the air. Both Clara and Jack were careful not to rush the connection, understanding that trust and love could not be forced. They respected each other's space, yet the small moments, the shared smiles, the quiet laughter, the brush of hands during chores, built a bond stronger than either had anticipated. One night as they sat by the fire, Clara shared a secret she had kept close to her heart for years.
I've always wanted a family, she whispered, but everyone has said I couldn't. Jack listened intently, his eyes reflecting the flickering firelight.
People can say what they want, he said softly. It doesn't make it true.
You define your own life, Clara, not them. The words were simple, but they carried a weight she had never felt before.
But Jack had not only accepted her but also encouraged her to believe in herself again. That night, as she lay in her small room, she thought about the journey she had taken, from humiliation and fear to hope and strength. She began to see the ranch not as a place she had been sent to as a joke, but as a place where her life could truly begin. Life on the ranch continued with its own rhythm. Clara and Jack worked side by side, tending to the animals, fixing fences, and maintaining the land. They learned from each other, laughed with each other, and occasionally argued over small matters, but always with respect. Through these everyday moments, Clara discovered that love was not just about grand gestures. It was about partnership, trust, and understanding. One morning, Clara awoke to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of fresh bread baking. Jack had started making breakfast, something he rarely did. He offered her a plate with a shy smile.
Breath. Thought you might like this, he said. Clara's heart warmed.
She realized that their connection was no longer just about survival or kindness. It had grown into something deeper, something she could not yet name. As weeks turned into months, Clara noticed changes not only in herself but also in Jack. He was more relaxed, more open, and even occasionally teased her gently, a small sign of the comfort and affection that had grown between them. Their companionship had become a silent language, understood without words, shared in glances, gestures, and small acts of care. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the porch, Jack spoke quietly. He glances around and desperate. He sees. Desperate's the worst parts. He glances around and desperate. I never thought I'd have someone like you here. Clara looked at him, feeling her heart flutter.
I feel the same way, she admitted softly.
I never expected to find this. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that happiness was possible. She realized that the pain of the past, the whispers, the humiliation, the fear, had not defined her. Instead, it had brought her here, to this place, to this man, to a life that was hers to shape. As the stars began to shine in the night sky, Clara and Jack sat together in comfortable silence. The world outside the ranch seemed distant, irrelevant. Here they had found a space of understanding, respect, and slowly a growing affection that neither had anticipated but both had come to cherish. Clara understood that life was unpredictable, full of hardships and surprises. But she also knew that sometimes the most unexpected paths led to the most beautiful destinations. And though she did not yet know what the future held, she felt a sense of anticipation and hope that she had never felt before. In the quiet of the ranch, with the soft sound of animals settling for the night, Clara finally allowed herself to dream, not of escaping her past, but of building a future she could be proud of. And for the first time in her life, she felt ready to embrace it. The seasons changed slowly on the ranch, or out in desperate summer. The fields that had been golden with sunlight now wore shades of amber and brown. Clara and Jack had grown accustomed to each other's presence. Their mornings began early, with chores that had become second nature, and their evenings were spent in quiet companionship, sharing stories, laughter, or simply the calm of watching the sun set behind the hills. But Clara had learned much during these months: how to care for the animals, how to mend fences efficiently, and even how to anticipate the weather by the patterns in the clouds. But what she had learned most was about herself. She had discovered a strength she had never known, a patience and resilience that had been buried under years of judgment and shame. And through it all, Jack was there, steady and unwavering, encouraging her with quiet words or simple gestures. One crisp morning as they were feeding the horses, Clara felt a strange flutter in her stomach. At first, she dismissed it as fatigue, the result of waking before dawn and working hard in the fields. But the feeling persisted, growing into a subtle, constant warmth that both comforted and alarmed her. She kept it to herself at first, unsure of what it could mean. Over the next few days, Clara noticed other changes, small shifts in her body and mood that made her heart race with a mixture of hope and fear. Could it be possible? Could she, who had been told she could never bear a child, actually be pregnant? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She tried to carry on with her daily tasks, but her mind kept returning to the possibility. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Clara finally gathered the courage to speak to Jack. They were sitting on the porch, the cool breeze rustling the leaves, the sound of the river in the distance. "Jack," she began hesitantly, I think I might be pregnant." Jack's head tilted, surprise flickering across his face. For a moment he said nothing, and Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She feared disappointment, fear, or even anger, but instead he reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Clara," he said softly, "if what you feel is true, then that's wonderful, truly wonderful."
Tears sprang to her eyes. After years of feeling judged and unwanted, here was a man who not only accepted her, but celebrated the possibility of new life growing within her.
She leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his support and the quiet strength of his love. The next weeks were a time of adjustment. Clara had to learn to pace herself, to take care of her body, and to accept that some tasks were too heavy for her now. Jack was always there, lifting her burdens, guiding her gently, and never allowing her to feel weak or incapable. They worked as a team, their bond deepening in ways that went beyond words. Despite the joy of the news, there were moments of doubt and fear. Clara worried about the town's reaction, imagining the whispers and judgment if they ever found out. She feared returning to a place where she had been humiliated, and the thought made her anxious.
Yet, Jack reminded her gently, "We live here, Clara. This is our life."
Brain. Their opinions don't matter. Clara clung to his words, drawing strength from them.
She realized that her happiness no longer depended on the approval of others but on the love and trust she shared with Jack. Slowly, the fear that had once controlled her began to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence and anticipation for the future.
Life on the ranch became a delicate balance of work and preparation.
Clara and Jack began to think about what the future might hold, discussing how they would care for their child, how they would continue running the ranch together, and how they could create a home filled with love and respect.
Each conversation, each plan strengthened their connection, building a foundation of trust and shared purpose. One afternoon, as Clara rested in the shade of an old oak tree, Jack brought her a small basket of fruit and bread. He sat beside her quietly, his presence comforting and reassuring.
"You're glowing," he said softly, a gentle smile playing on his lips.
Clara laughed, a soft, melodic sound.
"I'm scared," she admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if I can't do this?" His eyes steady and kind. "You are stronger than you know, and you won't be alone."
I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll face everything together.
A reassurance in his voice. The unwavering commitment in his gaze brought tears to Clara's eyes. For the first time, she felt a sense of true security, a feeling that she could rely on someone completely and without fear. As the months passed, Clara's body changed, and with each new movement or sensation, she was reminded of the life growing within her. She took extra care in everything she did, tending to the animals gently and allowing Jack to handle the heavier work. Their routine evolved, each day filled with small acts of love and care, shared moments that strengthened their bond. Jack, too, changed. He became even more protective, attentive, and gentle. He often watched Clara with a quiet pride, marveling at her resilience and the strength she displayed even in moments of doubt. There was a tenderness in his actions, a softness that contrasted with the rugged exterior of a man who had lived in solitude for so long. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars appear, one by one, Clara spoke quietly.
"I never thought I would be happy again," she admitted. "After everything, I didn't think life could surprise me like this." Jack turned to her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Life has a way of giving us what we need. Even if it doesn't come in the way we expect, we find joy in the most unexpected places, Clara.
And sometimes the greatest gifts come when we least expect them." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. In that moment, she understood that happiness was not about perfection or approval. It was about connection, trust, and love. She had found all three in the quiet strength of Jack and the life they were creating together. But yet, even amidst the joy, there were challenges. Clara experienced moments of discomfort and fatigue, and Jack's worry for her was evident in every glance and gesture. There were days when the work seemed too much, when Clara felt overwhelmed by her changing body and the responsibilities of the ranch. But through it all, they supported each other, facing every obstacle together with patience and determination. One morning, as Clara prepared breakfast, she noticed Jack standing quietly by the doorway, watching her with a thoughtful expression. "You're doing so well," he said softly. "I know it's not easy, but you're handling everything with such strength."
Clara smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. "I couldn't do it without you," she admitted.
Jack shook his head gently. "You could."
I just help carry the weight. But the courage, the strength, it's all yours.
The honesty and respect in his words made Clara's heart swell. She realized that their relationship was built not on pity or obligation, but on mutual respect and genuine affection. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the man who had entered her life when she had least expected it and had helped her believe in herself again. As the first signs of winter approached, Clara's pregnancy progressed, and the ranch took on a new rhythm. They prepared the home for the child, cleaning and organizing, creating a space that was warm and welcoming.
Each task, from sewing small blankets to arranging the nursery, was done with care and love, a reflection of the hope and joy growing in their hearts. One snowy evening, as Clara and Jack sat by the fire sipping warm tea, Clara spoke softly.
"Do you ever think about what life would have been like if I hadn't come here?"
Jack looked into the fire, his expression thoughtful.
"Sometimes," he admitted.
"But I'm glad you did. Everything changed because of it."
"We found each other, Clara. That's what matters."
Narration. Clara rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of the fire and the comfort of his presence. She realized that life's hardships had not broken her. They had led her to this place, to this love, and to the life growing inside her. With each passing day, Clara felt more confident, more hopeful, and more prepared for the future. The bond between her and Jack had deepened into something unshakable, a partnership built on trust, love, and shared dreams. And though they did not know what the future held, they were ready to face it together, with courage, patience, and unwavering support for one another. By the end of the season, Clara could no longer deny the joy and anticipation that filled her heart. She had transformed from a woman burdened by shame and fear into one who embraced life's possibilities, who believed in love, and who looked forward to the arrival of her child.
Psst. And through it all, Jack remained by her side, steadfast and devoted. A reminder that true partnership and love were built not on perfection, but on understanding, respect, and unwavering support.
As the snow fell softly outside, covering the ranch in a blanket of white, Clara and Jack sat together, hands entwined, hearts full. They knew that challenges lay ahead, but they also knew that together they could face anything. The ranch, once a place of solitude and routine, had become a home filled with hope, love, and the promise of a new beginning. But in that quiet winter evening, Clara allowed herself to dream, not of escaping her past, but of embracing a future filled with love, family, and the unshakable bond she shared with Jack.
Winter slowly gave way to spring on the ranch.
Breaking. The snow melted, revealing the soft green of the fields beneath.
Birds returned, and the air smelled of fresh earth and blooming flowers.
Clara moved carefully, feeling the changes in her body as her pregnancy reached its final stage. The months had been long, but she had grown stronger, happier, and more confident with each passing day. Jack was always by her side, his support unwavering, his eyes filled with pride and love.
Clara often looked at the small room they had prepared for the baby, filled with soft blankets, little clothes, and a tiny cradle. She had never imagined having such a space, never thought she would experience this joy after years of disappointment and fear. Yet now it was real, and every detail of the room reflected their hope for a happy future.
One bright morning, Clara woke early, feeling a sudden tightness in her stomach. She knew the moment had come. She called softly to Jack, who rushed to her side, his calm presence immediately easing her anxiety.
"We're ready,"
he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You're going to be amazing." Clara nodded, clutching his hand as they prepared for the journey to the nearest doctor, a small town a few miles away.
The ride was tense, filled with anticipation and hope.
Jack spoke quietly, offering words of encouragement, while Clara focused on steadying her breathing and remaining calm. The doctor met them quickly and guided Clara through each step, reassuring her and monitoring the baby's progress. Breaths. Hours passed in a mixture of tension and hope. Jack never left her side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, and whispering quiet words of love and reassurance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cries of a newborn filled the room. Clara gasped, tears streaming down her face as she saw the tiny life she had carried for months. Jack's eyes glistened with emotion, and he bent down to look at the baby.
"She's beautiful,"
Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Jack smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. breaths. "No," he said softly. "She's perfect. Just like you." Holding their child together, they felt a bond deeper than anything they had ever known. The years of pain, the whispers of the town, the doubts and fears, all of it seemed to fade away in the warmth of this moment. They had created a life together, and that life was now in their arms, small, fragile, and full of promise. The journey back to the ranch was quiet, filled with the gentle hum of a newborn's breathing. Clara rested in Jack's arms, feeling a peace she had never known. Their home, once a place of routine and work, now felt complete with the presence of their child. The future, once uncertain, now held the promise of happiness, love, and family. In the weeks that followed, Clara adjusted to life with the baby. She learned to care for her gently, to feed her, and to soothe her cries. Jack was always nearby, helping with every task, sharing every moment, and supporting Clara in ways both big and small. Their partnership had deepened into a relationship built on trust, love, and shared responsibility. As Clara grew stronger and more confident, she began to think about the town she had left behind. The place where whispers and judgment had once dominated her life now seemed distant. But she knew that a return was necessary. Not for approval, but to show that she had survived, thrived, and created a life of her own. One bright morning, Clara and Jack decided to make the journey back. They packed carefully, ensuring the baby would be comfortable, and set out with a mixture of anticipation and quiet courage. As they approached the town, memories flooded Clara's mind. The whispers, the mocking smiles, the judgment that had once weighed so heavily on her. But now, she was not the same woman. She was strong, proud, and surrounded by the love of a man who valued her completely. When they arrived, the townspeople gathered quickly, curious and surprised to see Clara return. Many had expected her to remain hidden, to continue living quietly away from their judgment, but Clara stepped forward, holding her baby gently, her eyes steady and her posture confident. "Clara," a woman whispered, awe and disbelief in her voice.
"Yes," Clara replied softly, a smile on her lips. "I've returned."
People looked at her, then at the baby, and finally at Jack. The boyish whispers of gossip turned into stunned silence. The woman who had been mocked, humiliated, and branded infertile had returned with life in her arms, a living testament to hope, resilience, and love. Some townspeople were humbled, realizing their cruelty and judgment had been misplaced. Others were ashamed, unable to meet her gaze. Clara acknowledged them quietly, but she did not linger on their opinions. Her heart belonged to a family now, the man who had stood by her and the child they had created together. Jack stood firmly beside her, protective and proud. He caught Clara's hand, squeezing it gently as they walked through the town. There was no fear, no hesitation, only a quiet confidence that came from having endured hardship and found love in its purest form. As they returned to the ranch later that day, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The humiliation, the whispers, the fear of being unloved. They had all been part of her past. Now, with her child and Jack, she had created a future filled with hope, joy, and the kind of love that could overcome any obstacle. The ranch, once a place of isolation and routine, now felt vibrant and alive. The baby's laughter, the soft coos, and the gentle cries filled the air, bringing warmth and life to every corner of the home. Clara and Jack worked together to care for their child, sharing responsibilities and discovering the joys of parenthood as a team. Each day, Clara felt gratitude for the unexpected turn her life had taken. She had been sent away as a joke, a cruel prank by those who did not understand her worth. But that same journey had led her to love, strength, and a family she had never imagined. She had transformed from a woman burdened by judgment into one who embraced life's possibilities, and she carried that confidence with her in every action and word.
Jack, too, had changed. He had discovered a depth of emotion he had not known, a sense of purpose and fulfillment in caring for Clara and their child.
Together they had created a home filled with trust, love, and mutual respect. A sanctuary where they could face any challenge, knowing they would do so together. As spring turned to summer, the ranch flourished along with their family. The fields were green and full of life, the animals healthy and well cared for, and the home filled with laughter and warmth. Clara often watched Jack and the baby together, feeling a deep sense of peace and contentment. She realized that happiness was not about avoiding pain or fear, but about finding someone who would stand by you through every challenge and joy. The town, once a source of judgment and cruelty, gradually came to accept Clara's return, though some never fully understood the transformation she had undergone. But it no longer mattered to her. She had found what truly mattered: love, family, and a life built on respect and shared dreams. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Clara and Jack sat on the porch, the baby sleeping peacefully in a small cradle nearby. They held hands, their hearts full of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. "We've come a long way," Clara said softly, leaning her head against Jack's shoulder. "Yes," Jack replied, his voice gentle. "Ray. And we'll continue to go far. Together."
Clara smiled, feeling the truth of his words in every part of her being. She had faced humiliation, doubt, and fear, yet she had emerged stronger, happier, and surrounded by love.
Her journey had not been easy, but it had led her to a life more beautiful than she had ever imagined. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Clara looked at the baby in the cradle, then at Jack, and felt a profound sense of completeness. They had endured hardships, faced judgment, and defied expectations. Now they had a future filled with hope, laughter, and love, a life that was theirs to shape together. The ranch, the quiet fields, the animals, and the warm home. All of it had become a symbol of resilience and triumph. Clara understood that her past had not defined her. It had prepared her for this moment, this life, this love. She had turned pain into strength, judgment into courage, and solitude into a family branch. And as the gentle night wrapped the ranch in calm, Clara knew one thing with absolute certainty. Life, no matter how cruel at times, had a way of rewarding those who dared to hope, to endure, and to love. She had been sent away as a joke, but she had returned with a gift that no one could mock or take away. A child, a family, and a love that would last a lifetime. The future was bright, and Clara, Jack, and their child faced it together, strong, united, and unshakably happy.